Greetings, greetings, greetings. You are now tuned into the vault. Trust Christian, own nothing, control everything. Just want to thank you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate everybody that tunes in live, listens in the replay. This is Trust Christian in the vault, own nothing, control everything. Today's episode is 320. Privacy is power. Once again, that's the vault, episode 320. Privacy is power. Always appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. We definitely wanted to do our standard Tuesday episode, so always appreciate everybody that's been tuning in live, listening to replay for years. People that's tuning in live, people that always listen to replay. So appreciate you all. Once again, this is Trust Christian in the Vault, episode 320. Privacy is power. And this is a episode actually that is appreciate Mississippi for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Mississippi for tuning in live, listening to replay. Privacy is power. Always feel free to type in where you're listening live or listening to replay from. Feel free to type it into the chat when you're listening or just even in the replay. Feel free to listen and just type in the chat where you're listening from, city and state. So this episode was actually coincidentally put into a position where we had to do this episode today. It was a demand. This is something that came up today in the consultation again, where we talk about privacy is power, uh, where being able to not have these public images, these public fortes and things of that nature. When people talk about, oh, it's the straw man, so the straw man's public, correct? Let's end that one there. The straw man's public, so we're talking private. Appreciate uh, Miami, oh, was it Florida? For Florida for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Florida. Appreciate you for tuning in live, listening to replay. Privacy is power. So not having a public image out in the public. See, we wanted to talk about this in the previous episodes, which is if you're going into the private, you got to become self-reliant. Create your own resource base. Privacy is power because you have your own resource base. You're not dependent on outside resources. It's self-sufficiency. It's privacy. So we're talking about privacy today as it relates to having power. Privacy is power, not only in the public, but in the private. You see it every day when you see corporations that say that they're owned by private entities. When you see corporations say that they are private corporations, what makes a private corporation a private corporation? So, as we move forward with privacy is power, we want to talk about, well, where does that power come in? Where does that power really come in at? And since we know where that power comes in from, we know that it comes from contract. One of the more powerful things on the planet. Maybe people haven't been privy to this type of thought process, but baseline contract. They're implied contracts, they're express contracts, contracts nonetheless. And so that's where we are nowadays. We're in the contract era, the era of verbal contracts, the era of paper contracts. And so when we see what privacy is, it deals with contracts. It's not just, oh, I'm in the public because I was born a citizen, hoo rah rah. You were born a citizen, right? Right. What happened to your right to contract privately? Does that still exist? It does. Article 1, Section 10 states that no state will impair an obligation of a contract. That is general because it doesn't specifically say public or private, and there's more to that. So as we continue to move on with the privacy is power, people say, well, what's the benefit of going private? You become self-sufficient. Is that not what the trustees are seeking? To become what we call independently wealthy? Not just financially independent, independently wealthy. That means they have a resource base for generations. They're in different fields. They built out what we call a family office. That's what they built out. They have echelons. Everything's not in the same entity, it's separate. The asset base is diverse across many different areas for the family. You hear wealthy people say, oh, give it away to charity nowadays. It's been that way for generations around the world. Castles in other countries are rented out as a museum and people live there. It's just having your affairs in the right capacity. The private capacity. That's why it's so powerful. But oh no, Trust Christian, is everybody ready for it? Clearly they're not. You gotta escape the clutches of dependency and move into a position of self-sufficiency. Having the capital is just as good as having the asset. Would you agree? You gotta have the capital to have the asset. And if you got the asset, then you can sell it for the capital. It's liquid. That's the way it sounds when we're talking about great asset bases. Even if you had land, holding land in a portfolio, people know moving land is not as easy as it sounds. But as far as selling land, if it's high in demand, always will be, you always have a seller, but you still have to sell it for liquid. So we talk about diversified asset base as a privacy is power. It's not just holding land. It's not just holding fruit. It's not just holding vegetable. It has to hold even higher collateralized assets, such as the farm equipment. Or are you contracting out that service as a family? Privacy is power. You can't be sued for anything when you don't own it, right? That's what it comes down to. We're in a litigious society. The States is litigious. The world is litigious. People want to get at your pockets, as they say. Appreciate Oakland, California for tuning in live, listening to replay. Always appreciate Oakland, California. One of the best places in the world. If you ever had a chance to go to Oakland, always recommend West Oakland. Don't go to the east. Stay on the west. Appreciate Texas for tuning in live, listening to replay. Texas is always great. Texas is huge. So appreciate Texas for tuning in live, listening to replay. Shout out to Dania Beach. Appreciate Dania Beach. Up and coming. One of the hottest markets actually in the United States, down there in Florida. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening to replay. Privacy is power. Because then you don't have to worry about the UCC. We got people contacting us from other countries asking us about the UCC. And all we have to do is send them a simple situation. See, we could go ahead and drop all the jewels. But how many is listening? What is the point of the UCC? Is that public contract or private contract? And people try to say, oh, I have a contract with the name. And it's a trust. But who's the grantor of it? These are the questions that we have to ask. The grantor, the trustees, the beneficiaries. Who are these people? But people say, oh, I know trusteeship. Privacy is power. Why? Because people will come to the private sector and they want to shortcut the shortcut. They think they can get around trustee training. So they go to the public people and they ask the public people, how do I get around trustee training? How do I get around the private trustee training? And what do the public people say? Well, you don't have enough money. You got to have $3 million. You got to have $20 million. You got to have at least $1 million. The public people, the public accountants, the public lawyers. Why would you want to give all your assets away? Why don't you want to make your kids the beneficiary? Isn't that what they say? Oh, you don't even have $25,000. And what's that? What's $25,000? You don't have $50,000. What's $50,000? You don't have $50,000. What's your net worth? That's what they ask you. What's your net worth? So then you get on the line with people like us, Trust Christian at the Vault, and we have to tell you that people's life insurance policies sometimes can be looked at as an asset. But how many people look at that? How many people talk about that in the public? You can go ask. See, we talk to you so you can go talk to your team. So you can go talk to your insurance agent to say, is my life insurance an asset? Did you know it was an asset? Or you think you just paying a never-ending bad bill? Is it an investment? Well, we can't technically say that. Wow, it almost looks like it's almost a what? True savings. It's a wealth preservation tool. Supposedly, life insurance is supposed to be indexed to the market. But these are the things that you talk to your team about with the licenses. But then what happens in the public is the entrepreneurs, because we have to put this on the entrepreneurs and the investors, not the team, not the lawyers, not the accounts, because you get them, you hire them. So when we talk about hiring the right people looks like asking them the right questions and being able to know what to ask them in the first place. What do you mean? For years we had people go to the public people. The public people would turn down trustees. Why? Because you don't have the public. You don't satisfy the public needs. Why? When anytime you go to any wealth management bank, they want you to at least try to deposit $25,000 into the account from the beginning. Can you at least wire over 25 from the beginning? You guys can go interview wealth management banks. Google it and see which ones and see how much they ask you to deposit. Oh, do you have $1 million in assets? Once again, you see that question. But when you know what you have as an asset, does it have to be liquid or hard? That's the questions we ask when they say, do you have $1 million in assets? Because not everything has to be liquid. Some things can be hard. Some things can be paper assets. For the people that use the crypto, people can look at that as portfolio income. That's paper assets. That's not liquid. You got to liquidate that. And if you didn't liquidate it, it's hard. It's paper. There's power in privacy. That's the power in those portfolios in the private. Is if the public is going to acknowledge those portfolios in the private. You made an investment, quote unquote. It grew. That's an investment. It's an asset. Why? Because it appreciated. Capital gains now. They say some type of monetary value has increased with this asset. Why? Because it's an asset now. Because it grew. Okay. There's power in privacy though. See, the crypto was private, right? But hold on. There's power in that. How do you keep it? Can we show this portfolio? Hard asset? Who's going to report that? That's why it may not be good to disclose that to a public company that you're trying to do a brokerage with. There's power in privacy because you learn that you got to call these companies still. You can't just do electronic filings, they're public. Everything can't be done electronically. Some things have to be done by paper. People notice in the private, people in the public want to disacknowledge it because they're trying to shortcut the shortcut. Appreciate California for tuning in live, listen, replay. Always appreciate California for tuning in live, listen, and replay. Christian at trustchristian.com is the email you can contact if you're looking to get a consultation, get going in Trustee Training. There's power in privacy because there's a never-ending source of money in the private. Where's the money created? From the private. There's a never-ending source of money in the private. In the public, there's limitations, there's rules, there's shifting and rotation in financial capital and where it's going to be allocated in the public. We were actually going to possibly read the daily wrap to you all, but that would be high-end information. But the markets, ladies and gentlemen, have pretty much hit an all-time high again. We're in June, get ready to go into July. Trust Christian and Vault, own and control everything. Always going to be that. But the point being is that we're getting ready to go into the second half of the year. Were you able to save up your salary for the first half and now you got to get back to work? Have you been to work already? These are some of the things that we have to talk about in the consultations at times, because this is what people ask about. Well, my what is that called? Unemployment. My unemployment's getting ready to end. Trust Christian in the vault. Well, we got the PPP loan. We got $20,000. You got $20,000. Trust Christian in the vault has never got $20,000 of free money. We've actually lost that in investments. We've lost that. We've lost that. It's a loss. Did you lose it? See, it's not a shame if you lost it. You lost it with good intentions. I guess everybody has good intentions, right? Right. We know that some people, this is market consensus, people got that and they wasted it. See, it's different when you earned it and then you lose it. Is there a difference there? When you earn it and you lose it, where some people just had to say, hey, do you have a social security number? Sure, sign up. Oh, you're going to use the social security number. The same number that all the Moors, all these organizations say that oh, you shouldn't use the social. You got to go private. You're right. The private ones of us, we didn't participate. It was a wealth transfer. While poor people were getting welfare benefits, the private sector grew. Look at the stock market. The public market is a reflection of the private market. The private market has grown. So has the public market. The public market is at all-time highs. Where are your pockets right now? See, we looked at this past year as a wake-up call to what the 80-20 rule really looks like. 80% of the population is living paycheck to paycheck. Are you still on that hamster wheel? See, when you listen to the vault, it's okay to come to the senses that, wow, I'm either 80 or I'm 20. That's an easy rule. How are you going to be in the private when you still doing public stuff? The public handouts? You needed 20,000, you needed 50,000. We know people that got more than that. See, what happened was we saw the wealth transfer happen for the businesses. There are companies right now that are held afloat in the market. Companies that you all may have given money to in an investment. They didn't need help. The government bailed them out, didn't it? Didn't the government bail out the airlines? Aren't they going to have to pay it back? Whose money are they going to pay it back with? The people's money. Because you put money in the stock. And right now, these companies are saying there's labor shortages. There's crimps in the supply chains again. Oh, sounds like a cyclical problem. It is a cyclical problem. We're going to see in the next 90 days what this market is going to do to people's lives. They've extended the eviction thing they supposedly said on the CDC with, extending the eviction thing. But, ladies and gentlemen, how much longer do you think you can defer your bills? Where's the marketplace? When you hear people in the public say people don't want to work, you can't say that. You're going to easily be on your knees. You are on your knees. You don't think you're on your knees? Because you're not thinking for yourself. It's business, not personal. It's about your last name, not your first name. That's what the trustees say when you say privacy is power. Privacy is power. You gave up the dependent thought. Why is the message so hard to hear? Because you don't want to think? Maybe people don't. But there is a line for them. People got in it and they used it. That's the public line. The private line says during that time, there was an increase. There was an increase. Period. You grew assets. You grew your knowledge base. You grew your network. Even in the pandemic, there was a few apps that came out. that blew up, that were social based, connecting entrepreneurs, connecting investors, connecting people. The privacy adds to the fact that you don't want to participate in what's called indentured servitude. Charges are on entities, or are they on people? Charges. And so we see that the system, what it is, penal in nature, we see that the humans, the ones that are considered men that we walk around, we understand that we control entities. You could bankrupt the entity. Remember, if the entity can't pay the charges, it can be bankrupt. Right. Now, why would you want to attach, whether it's your government name or your spiritual name, to the debt entity called the states? Well, because the United States can help me absolve a debt. Is that true? Because we haven't seen anyone pull it off yet. All these guys is on the internet still selling products. All these guys are still on the internet selling stuff. But wait till the day you hear the boss say, hey, trustee training, you're going to have to go to another company now. It's time to set the sails into the, you got to set your sails into the winds. You have to evolve as an investor, as an entrepreneur. Privacy is power because it helps us evolve. In the private, we're morphing just like the public. The public marketplace is morphing to a mobile-centric marketplace. It's taking advantage of the mobile marketplace. That's the public marketplace. The mobile device is taking advantage of that. It eliminates certain interaction and has the doorway if you want to have other social interaction. But what about the private? How's the private still growing? How are you guys meeting with each other during COVID? How did that work out? Trust Christian in the vault? How did that work out? It looks like how it's always looked. The private was around before the internet. Oh, did we forget that? Or we became too teched out? The private was around before the internet. See, private people, they know the rules to the game. They know that they're going to protect themselves at all costs. So in turn, they're willing to take risk. People in the public, what type of risk are they taking? They're protected. They're protected by what? What's people call their own ignorance. Well, I don't have a great financial education, Trust Christian. We talked to someone that was 50 years old and said, well, Trust Christian, I'm 50 years old. Learning about that financial stuff, it makes me nauseous. You think that was one time? That's multiple times. That financial information, it just makes my head hurt. I don't really like thinking about finances. That's going to make my head hurt. That comes from many groups, young and old. Thinking about, I don't really have a great financial education. Okay, well, it's time to get it. We were talking to someone the other day in our trustee training program. We were just really letting them know, like, look, the reason why you're not going to get the private is because you don't have the vocabulary. You got to learn financial information, financial vocabulary, that's it. You got to learn legalese. It's not about just even learning it. It's about almost utilizing it, because when you learn the language, you can go out and have conversations with lawyers and accountants better. That's how it works. But it just shows you how much you're either one, and who you're talking to. Because and think about it. What if the lawyers you were sitting around knew everything we're talking about, but they never told you? The accountants know what we're talking about, they never told you. See, we had trustees bring things to lawyers and accountants' attention. They verify it, but they just don't do it often. That's the difference. There's power, and privacy is power. Protecting your image. We talked about copyrighting your image. How many people copyrighted their image? They have a thing called Getty Images. They get access to people's images. These companies get access to people's estate and images. What happened? The internet became what it is, the World Wide Web. Hmm. Yeah, we'll go ahead and answer this question because so many people, they listed the vault for so many years. And this is a big question for a lot of people that contact the vault trustees. Appreciate everybody for listening this far. If you listen this far, you're about to get a jewel in a gym from, just experience. So appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listen, replay. But here's the gym. So, you're sitting there with your mentor and you ask your mentor, well, look, I just want to think about go ahead and giving up the social. Uh, I'm thinking about giving up the social because, I just, I don't want to deal with that system. A lot of people come to the vault, they ask the vault that question like, hey, Trust Christian Vault, I don't want to be attached to this welfare system or whatever it is, anything that has to deal with that, all of that stuff. We get that, and that's just the honest question. We're not putting that out there to anybody that you have to ask that question, but we get that question from people all the time. A lot of people ask that question like, I just want to get rid of the social, and that's what they say. They just want to get rid of it, and they always contact the vault and they ask that question. So you know when we get to this point in the conversation, we just give them the answer that even the mentor said. And the mentor, and so many times have we talked about this with the mentor because, and mentors in general, but one particular mentor we're thinking about, very adept in law, is actually a lawyer. And we ask him, and he says, and we know he's on that side of the table. He's a private lawyer, so he's a private lawyer, and we notice, and we ask him, and he says, look, you're giving up benefits, and as long as you're willing to give those things up, then you got to know that that's all you're doing. So it's never been really a opposing type answer of like, oh, you have to jump through all these hoops. He down there say just get rid of it, and so you all know that there's steps to get rid of it. If you're listening, you know. But point being is he's not a fan of it as a mentor. So when we told him, particularly Trust Christian, say, hey, this what I'm letting you know, this what I'm looking to do. He was like, well, it's gonna block you off from getting like subsidies from the government. Like like they might have like first time home buyer. Like if you don't have a social, you can't do a lot of government program type things. So that's what it comes down to. That's what he say to you. And it's like, okay, well if you know that you are gonna earn it, then it don't matter. That's it. You gotta pull it out. You don't need to go into debt to pull it out. But some people are willing to go into indentured servitude to pull it out. And that's backwards. But it's forward for people. We got mentors that say you should never get a mortgage on a house. They say you're supposed to pay for the house in cash. What mentors in your life do you have that say that? We have mentors that say you are not supposed to pay a mortgage, but to pay cash for a house. That's the mentorship we come from. You don't do that. But we live in a society where 80% of the population has what? Mortgages if they have them. The 80-20 rule. People that have houses have mortgages. That's what supports the country. Privacy. Taking that property off the public market instead of having a mortgage on it publicly with a public bank. But people didn't want to think about that. They didn't want the company to make sure that they could have a housing for their whole life. Why? Because the company can afford housing. But they didn't want to do it the proper way. They want to live incorrectly out of the corporation on the public side, which can get ripped to shreds because it's public. Privacy is power. Oh man, Church Christian, no, but about my credit score? Because that's what it comes down to. And then we got mentors around us to say, well, we figured that out. We figured that out. It's business, not personal. Those are easy solutions. Where's the marketplace right now? Is it so much down in the public mainstream that they can't get out of the public and come over to the private? Probably not. Why? Because it goes against their 25 years of learning of life. It goes against their 30 years of learning of life. We've had people in trustee training at 19 years old. We've had people who probably had an 18-year-old. We know we had a 19-year-old for sure. 19 and up. From that point on, 19, 20, 22, 25, 30. They've got in trustee training. So the ones that are older than that, what makes them not go private? What makes them not beseech it? Because they have to overcome the public knowledge they've been given. It's like saying you went and you got a programming to do it this way, and that's the only path you're going to persist on until you either change. Is the change going to cost you? Of course it is. Everything costs time and money. And as trustees, we always count the opportunity cost loss. This is something that we talked to our trustees this year. We got trustees that minimum 50% on their growth this year. Minimum 50%. There's no bank in America guaranteeing that. But because when you're in the private sector, you know private people, you have access to private things. 50% minimum growth. Period. Now, what other assets do you have that you know are going to give you 50% on whatever your principal was? What do you have going on? Do you got 30% one? Do you got a 20% one? Do you got a 10%? Because we said minimum 50. That's what we're talking about in the private. People say, oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. It's the private. That's why it's unbelievable. See, in the public, they're giving you 0.001. In the public, they're giving you 0.16. Oh, this is a money market mutual fund. Go look at the money market mutual funds. What are they producing out here nowadays? Then there's so many financial instruments and financial things to talk about. It's like, well, where do we start? That's what people always say. First, we start in protection. Second thing we go to is preservation. We practice private family banking. Private family banking. It's called private family banking. It's the thing that people say, I wanted the family banking concept. It's the private family banking concept. We're looking to have it as a tool for generational wealth. Private once again. Private contract once again. Can't be seized as an asset, but oh, it was an asset though, right? Right. How interesting is that point? But I don't trust Christian. I don't know. I don't have $1 million. Remember, that's what you said. The public said I needed to have $1 million. The public said that I needed to have $25,000 deposit on margin. So they said I needed to, they said I needed to wire over $20,000 immediately. They said I needed to have $1 million in assets. That's what the public Bank of Mellon said. Right. We're not speaking for that bank. We're not speaking on behalf of that bank. We're not speaking against that bank. We're just saying that if you call these institutions, we're talking about institutions that are institutions that you can go and you can read these terms. These terms are subject to agreement, and you looking at these people and going through their information. We're not promoting them, and we're not discouraging. We're just telling you objectively to look at these companies not as a promote or as a negative. We're looking at it as these are companies that are called wealth management banks. That's a wealth management bank. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about go to them and do anything. We're talking about they are a wealth management bank. There are J.P. Morgan, all of them, Goldman Sachs. Some of them are institutional banks. These are banks that athletes go to. These are where movie stars go to give their money in an investment account, and they grow the money. That's the bottom line. They're investment management accounts. You guys can go research this. But what do they ask you to deposit? What do they ask you to have in assets? These are the people that can give you these returns. This is where you go look at investment bankers and you go look at hedge funds, and they're telling you, oh, we got 300% on our portfolio. Oh, we got 600% on our portfolio. Oh, we got 1,300% on our portfolio. And then you do see some hedge funds say, oh, wow, we were going against GameStop this year and we got knocked out of the water, supposedly. But then they got bailed out. That was just an opportunity for a bigger hedge fund to buy out a smaller hedge fund. That's all that was. And that's all it ever will be. Because that's what happened. Big bank take little bank in this situation. Privacy is power, because now you're in a private network with people, and it's different. Can privacy pervade over the public? Maybe not. But guess what? The private was here before the public. The private was here on the land that people say they're trying to claim and all this other stuff. The private was here before the public. So how do we get past the fact that if the private was here before the public, how can the how can the public ever overtake the private then? And the rules and stipulations that are adhered to it. But it's a situation with your mind, ladies and gentlemen, your perception. They say it might be mental because we're in 3D. It's mental. Not just physical, it's mental too. You don't have to be in chains to feel like someone has a ball and chain attached to you, or something has a ball and chain attached to you. There's mental. Most people may never get that. It's mental. So you do have to overcome some things. You got to overcome those old programs. Privacy is power because you program yourself in the private. You program your bloodline. You program your generational wealth. This is what we stand for. You have a family crest. You have a family mission. It's the private. It's your last name came before the public, before the many various business holdings that your family has. How many people play around with this generational wealth? First of all, here we go. Generational wealth is private. Did you know that? Let's play this game. Generational wealth is private. They're not showing you anything. Do you know who the Rothschilds are? Do you know who the Rockefellers are? Do you know who the Carnegies are? Let's talk about the families that have endowments with colleges. Let's talk about the families that started the colleges. They're private. Their children don't have to pay for college. They go for free. Every generation. Generation after generation after generation. They're going to the best school in the country. Sounds like they got smart. I gave 13 of my grandchildren, 40 of my grandchildren, great grandchildren. You gave 50 of your bloodline the best opportunity to make the name better. Generational wealth, right? How you doing generational wealth when your children don't even want to go in the same business that you're in? That's the question too, the ones that don't want their children to go into the business that they're in. Because generational wealth is usually carried over with people that are in the same background. And this is a fact. We see them at the events. People that are from big families, their families are part of the asset and wealth management. They are involved in it. They can third party it to a IB, but that's not the case in all cases. Everybody's not parsing out their family generational wealth to a bank. They're not every family is not taking an easy route out, handing it over to a bank. A public bank. What are they handing over? The insurance amount of money that the government's going to be insured on the public bank? Families are managing their own wealth privately. People ask, "Oh, where should I carry the gold? Where should I carry the silver?" The family bank. Family bank. How many people have a family bank? A private family bank. Oh no, Church Christian, what do you mean? Is this not supposed to be at the bank? The public bank? Ladies and gentlemen, we've already shared about the public bank and what they're good for. The public banks are not where you hold capital. You have to have your own portfolio. That's your private bank. Portfolio privately. Not, oh, it's in my name. Everything's in my name, Trust Christian. I'm still buying and selling and holding assets in my name. Buying and selling, holding assets at that. Buying and selling and holding assets in their name. That's called public. But they want to go private. We hear it. We hear it all the time. It's something that we hear. But we know that actions speak louder than words. Public and private, they don't mix. And when you come over into the vault and the private, we put you in contact with the people that can help you win. But you got to invest in yourself. That's a private thing. How can the government, who's a party of people, say, well, this person doesn't have enough money to invest in themselves, so we're going to give them money to invest in themselves. And we're not going to ask them for anything in return. Now, do you think if you were in power, you would give away that deal for free like that? If you were in that position, would you give away something for free because somebody you feel was disadvantaged? You wouldn't ask them for anything in return ever? Well, it's for everybody. No wonder they're using it too. They're using it too. But I thought public and private don't mix. Well, you're right. They have blind trust as politicians. Politicians use blind trust. That's even worse. They oh boy. Oh boy. It's just sit in the room, understanding financial education, improving your financial education, having the proper education, investing in your education. How many people are going to do it? The 20 percenters. And it's really less than that. But let's just use the Pareto principle. That is 20% and 80%. There's power in privacy. Is power? Because the people that chose privacy over the public, this past year alone in trustee training, were able to benefit. They were able to benefit greatly. That's what happened. And the ones that didn't, they didn't. But we're pointing out ones that did, because they did. It's not a, well, what happens when you go private? You get to benefit from the power in actually going private. Now you're in an environment that things can be like unbelievable. Why? Because it's the private. Oh, wow, I never thought of that. I never heard of that. You wouldn't have. It's private. So. Appreciate everybody for tuning in live, listening, replay. Christian@trustchristian.com. If you want to reach out to the vault, find out what's going on. We look forward to connecting with you all. Doing consultations, Christian at Trust Christian. Trustee Training, Christian at Trust Christian. Look forward to hearing from you all. Enjoy the rest of your time.